Will the Denver Broncos look to commit to the run game going further, even if they're trailing in some games? This is just one of the several questions asked to us in our latest Denver Broncos mailbag that we'll break down on today's brand new episode. Good Morning Broncos. Good morning, Broncos Country. Welcome into another episode of Good Morning Broncos, your daily Broncos conversation with a cup of coffee every single day here on Mile High Sports YouTube page. Mile High Sports is every team, every day. We just hit 3.5K subscribers here on YouTube, so please do us a favor. We look to get to 4K. Make sure you hit that subscribe button down below here, and here's the reason why. Not only are you going to get daily Broncos conversation, but with the Colorado Avalanche off to a 3-0 start, you're going to get conversation from Arif Dean, our Colorado Avalanche beat reporter. The Denver Nuggets season is starting up. They're just wrapping up the preseason here this week. You're going to get Ryan Blackburn on the Pickaxe and Roll podcast, plus daily Broncos content. On top of that, you'll get Colorado Buffaloes content as well with Deion Primetime Sanders taking over here in Boulder here. But hey, great to have you all here with us once again. We approach week 7 of the NFL season. Make sure you pour yourself a cup of coffee because, hey, it's been a little bit of a drag so far with Denver sitting at a 1-5 record. It hasn't been what anybody had anticipated. I think from a record standpoint, this is definitely shocking to see where Denver is at, and we've talked about that here on the show. So you know how it is every single week. We open it up to the avid listeners and watchers in Broncos Country. We always ask for their best questions that they want to have answered, and we bring it here on GMB. We bring it onto the website, milehighsports.com, where you can get all the written content coverage of every single team here in Colorado. Make sure you check out Mile High Sports. Make it part of your daily routine. Download the app on your phone. We have you covered here. So anyways, let me waste no time here, Broncos Country. Let's get into that first question that we're going to break through here on today's mailbag edition of GMB. The first one comes in from our good friend newtype_JK47 on Twitter. Ask the question here: will the Denver Broncos commit to the run game more, even if they're trailing? And could this be something that Sean Payton does to maybe take the load off of Russell Wilson? Great question here, right? Because you've heard me on this show here the last 5-6 weeks saying, hey, the Broncos have to find a way to run the football, right? Because look, as much as we want to talk about, the defense's struggles this season, the offense, Russ has been actually, outside of the last 2 games, the passing offense for Denver has been the best part of their offense so far this season in terms of numbers and consistency. The last 2 weeks, not so much. It's been an area of concern here. But I think more importantly, when we take a look at where this Denver team is at and some of the circumstances in some of these games, they just simply haven't committed to the run game. And I think that's been a huge issue. And I don't know if they've had maybe the best plan in place, right? Because I think they're still trying to figure it out. It's a brand new offensive scheme here. But the run game, when they have ran the football, it actually has been a very, very solid and underrated aspect of their team. And I think you can maybe make an argument it's probably been the most effective part of their team here. But Denver, at times, because of circumstantial flow of the game, they've had to abandon the run game. And I think more importantly, we have seen at times here where Sean Payton, and I think Kansas City is a great example here. Denver is down 13-0 at halftime. You don't have to abandon the run game there. But you've seen moments in that game specifically in Kansas City on Thursday Night Football where, look, the pass game is not working for Denver, yet they still try to pass the football. The run game was working. I mean, let's go into the first half here against the Kansas City Chiefs on Thursday Night Football. Denver had 94 total yards of offense. You know how much of that was on the ground? 70 of that 94 yards came on the ground, and that was in combination between Russ scrambling a little bit, Michael Burton getting some carries, but mainly Jaleel McLaughlin and Javonte Williams. And I think one of the things we have to talk about here is I think that there is a now legitimate factor. I think Jaleel McLaughlin has earned the running back 2 spot here for the Broncos. And Javonte Williams, coming off that quad injury, he's starting to get to where he needs to be from a health standpoint. But it's no coincidence here that Jaleel McLaughlin got the first carry of the game against Kansas City. It's no coincidence here that Jaleel McLaughlin received 21 offensive snaps over the course of that game against Kansas City. Javonte Williams, 18 offensive snaps in that game against Kansas City. Samaje Perine, 9 snaps here. Now, obviously, I think you have to factor in, okay, what's the situation here on first down? If you're in a passing situation on third down, we saw Samaje Perine gets some run there alongside Javonte Williams. And look, Jaleel McLaughlin's strength is not as a pass blocker, but it doesn't necessarily matter because he's a good runner. He's an explosive pass catcher out of the backfield. You can make up for a lot of that stuff there by just featuring him. And I think that we're going to see going forward, I think we're going to see a lot more of Javonte Williams. I think we're going to see a lot more of Jaleel McLaughlin. And I don't know if Denver's going to embrace maybe a 3-back committee approach, but I think it was very interesting that against the Chiefs on Thursday, Samaje Perine didn't have a single carry in the run game. So I think that is something to keep an eye on here if you're a member of Broncos Country here. But, I think ideally Denver should commit to the run game a little bit more here. You're obviously struggling in pass protection, the offensive line. Mike McGlinchey on the right side struggling. Garrett Bowles on the left side struggling in pass protection here. I think for the most part, the Denver's interior. I think Ben Powers, Lloyd Cushenberry, Quinn Miners, I think they've actually been pretty solid in pass pro in the interior. A lot of the problems have come on the outside there. So for me, if you can't maintain pass protection and keep Russell Wilson upright, how do you manage, how do you counteract that? Well, you have to have a run game, right? And I think that Denver and Sean Payton has even expressed that he himself has got to be more patient with allowing the run game to develop. And I think he's got to embrace that. And I think this week against the Green Bay Packers, that front seven that they have with guys like Kenny Clark, Rashawn Gary, the list goes on and on and on. They got some dogs. Quay Walker at linebacker. It's going to be a tough challenge here for Denver. But if they can run the football against Green Bay, it'll open some other things up. I think if this offense has the identity of just being a pass-happy offense with no tight end that has no explosiveness, no offense to Adam Troutman, Denver has no speed or athleticism at the tight end position. That, in my opinion, makes them very, very one-dimensional going forward, and that is a huge issue here for this offense. As much as people want to pile on Russell Wilson, I think you can help out Russell Wilson a little bit further by having balance in the run game and the pass game. And if you can't find a way to run the football and you have to sit back there and pass, it's going to make it easier for defenses because defenses know you have to pass, so they can design coverage schemes, coverage looks to be able to take that away. So great question here to open up the mailbag on Good Morning Broncos. Thank you, my friend. Newtype_JK47 on Twitter. Appreciate you so much here. The next question we get that comes from Kinley G. Asked the question here, which Broncos players do you think will be moved at the NFL trade deadline? I think my stance on this is going to be entirely different than a wide majority of people in Broncos country. What I mean by that is a lot of fans want the Broncos to just trade as many people as possible, get rid of so many different players because they just want so many draft picks. I honestly don't think that Denver is going to do that. Now, who are the players that we think maybe will be on the move? I think there's a real legitimate chance that Courtland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy, I think both of these guys, there's a chance that they're on the move. If there were some trade offers for them in the offseason, obviously Denver was asking for a first or a second round pick. No team was offering that. I doubt and I don't believe that Denver's going to get a first or a second round pick for either of these guys at this juncture of the season. However, I feel like Courtland Sutton at this point has more trade value than Jerry Jeudy based on production. But I think these guys just maybe will benefit from a different environment. As good of the players that they are, Denver's just not a place where they're finding ways to grow, right? And it's not necessarily their fault. I think there's so many different circumstances with the revolving door of changing coaches and coordinators and quarterbacks over the course of the last 3 to 4 years. I mean, that's a huge issue that plays into that here. But I think really those are the two guys that we are going to more than likely see moved. I've seen people throw Patrick Surtain's name out there. I've seen people throw Justin Simmons' name out there. But here's the deal. And you get this vibe from Sean Payton as well. He even told us in our Monday press conference that why the defense has been playing better and why the secondary has been playing better, especially in the red zone. He mentioned it specifically. He said having Justin back there has been a big, big boost to where we were able, how we've been able to take steps forward here. He's a big fan of Patrick Surtain. Sean Payton is not going to sign off, in my opinion. Unless the offer was like way too good to be true. I don't see Sean Payton signing off on really scrapping a lot of the defense. I don't see that happening. I don't see him offsetting Justin. I don't see him offsetting Pat at this point here because he wants to win. Sean Payton wants to win. These players want to win. Patrick Surtain has come out and says he wants to finish his career in Denver. That's the type of guy he is. As much as like Denver has been bad, he's been great. So I think the unfortunate thing is when we look at where this football team is going, it's easy right now, I think, for fans to want to hit the reset button, get rid of everybody. But that's not how Sean Payton works, and I'd be very shocked if they did that. And look, I think some other things we got to keep an eye on here too on the defense. I think that Denver's got 1 to 3 potential superstar linebackers here. I think there's a superstar in this bunch that I'm talking about that will emerge, right? We're talking about Jonathan Cooper, Nick Bonito, and Baron Browning. Denver doesn't need two elite edge rushers. I think the idea that you have to have two elite edge rushers in the NFL, I think, is asinine because here's the reality. Not many teams have that. The really, really good teams have one legitimate edge rusher, pass rusher, whatever you want to call it. And then you have really good players at the levels next to him at defensive end, D tackle, the other positions complementary. And then you have good linebacker play, good secondary play. Denver's got two really good players on the back end of the secondary. And as much flack as people are giving Damari Mathis is actually playing a lot better. And I think a lot of his struggles that people have, people don't understand coverage, which drives me nuts because they'll be playing cover three. Someone catches a curl route at 7 to 8 yards, and everyone's automatically saying, "Oh, Damari Mathis is getting burnt." Like that, people don't understand coverage, and it drives me nuts. And that's why I don't interact with that stuff on social media because you can't convince people who think otherwise. And so it is what it is. I like to go on a little tangent there at times just because I'm passionate about that, and it's just you see a lot of unfair criticism thrown towards players' ways. You look at what Damari has done in the run game coming up and tackling. He's been big there. Obviously, there's moments where he can be better, but there's moments everybody in the Broncos defense can be better. I've really liked the emergence of Jaquan McMillan on a cost-effective deal right now, former undrafted rookie free agent. Like Denver doesn't have to scrap the whole defense. I think schematically they got to play better, and I think they need somebody to step up on the defensive line. And I'm talking about guys like DJ Jones, Mike Purcell, or Zach Allen is getting double teamed at a very, very high rate. Jonathan Harris has to step up. I mean, right now I feel like he's kind of been the weak link there on the defense. If you make a change or you make a big move, I think Denver's biggest focus on defense is really going to have to be at D tackle and defensive end this offseason. I think that's their biggest need at that position there defensively. And then they'll get Caden Stearns back next year at the safety position, which, will be good there. But, ideally, I think the only people we'll see dealt at this point will be on the offensive side of the ball. I think Jerry Jeudy, Courtland Sutton, there could be a chance that Garrett Bowles maybe gets dealt here in the next 2 weeks, but I don't see a mass exodus in the way that a lot of Broncos fans do. And I think it'll be very, very interesting to see how these next 2 weeks kind of play out here. I don't see Denver necessarily going out there and trying to trade to acquire one specific player, but there is a chance that like they did last year when they traded Bradley Chubb and they traded Chubb draft capital, they received Chase Edmonds and some capital. I don't think we'll see that, but it's possible. So let's keep the train rolling here on this morning's mailbag edition of Good Morning Broncos. The next one comes in from @orange_crush 512. They asked the question, turning back time for a bit, do you think Russell Wilson will be having a similar type of situation season in Washington as he is here if the trade went that route? Look, I think it's very possible, right? And I think that there's a very big probability of that. And maybe what I'm trying to say here is, look, we don't know how it goes. I think the word, and you've heard me say this before, environment is so important. Denver and Washington are two teams that haven't had a very sustainable, winning, player-friendly environment over the course of however many years. Now, a lot of changes. Denver went through an ownership change. Russ has been part of that. Washington, and like if he was in Washington, he would have underwent an ownership change there as well. For me, I think what maybe tells me that there would be a high probability of that is look at how the offensive line and look how Sam Howell, like Sam Howell's playing some good football, but Sam Howell is getting hit at an astronomical rate. He's already been sacked 34 times this season. Like he's getting sacked an average 5-6 times a game. But folks, that's crazy. And to expect that, any quarterback put in that situation is going to succeed and have sustainable success is very unlikely. But, I think a lot of people want to pin all the stuff here. And I'm not talking about your question here directly. I'm just talking about what we see from national media, we see from fans. A lot of people believe that quarterback wins is a stat. And the reality is, folks, it's not. A single quarterback is not going to will you to victory. A single quarterback in a team that's 11 versus 11 isn't going to be the one person that's going to lead you to win. Now, you have to have pieces around you. You have to have good pass catchers. You have to have a good run game. You have to have good protection. I mean, it's winning in football is so hard, and everybody pins it just, okay, if they lose this game, it's on the quarterback. They win this game, it's on the quarterback. Like, it's a team game. It's a collective effort from everybody. And I think that the dialogue around football has become a little bit tiresome because everyone's saying it's quarterback wins, quarterback wins, quarterback wins. Now, look, here's to say, look, Russell Wilson, obviously, yes, he can play much better, but I think so many people, it's so easy for people to pin everything on Russell Wilson, right? Because of his mega contract. Well, Denver gave him this big contract, so he himself, by himself, should win games. It's so wild to me that level of thinking has infiltrated football and conversation and discourse because when you know it, if you've played the game, you've coached it, you've been around it, that's not true. You can have great players at the quarterback position, but if you don't have a good system, you don't have good players around that player, and things are falling apart at different levels, you're never going to win. It's hard to do just that. And I think a lot of people too, you can make the example, right? We saw it earlier this season. When Travis Kelce's not playing, like Patrick Mahomes in the Chiefs offense, they struggle even further than most people do. You look at every team around the NFL, unless you have a guy, right? I think we all thought with the LA Rams when Cooper Kupp was out on IR, we didn't see, I saw it, but I had kind of had a vibe that Puka Nacua was going to be a dog. But if they didn't have a guy like Puka Nacua, the Rams would have struggled as well. I mean, I think you look at all these different teams and the situations that they're in, and it's contingent upon a quarterback needs someone he can rely on. And I think primarily, I don't know if he would have had that in Washington. He hasn't had that so far here in Denver consistently. And I think that's a coaching, organizational level. It's chaos. And quarterbacks, I think, get the unfair brunt of the criticism, I think, in a lot of different aspects. So I think that's a great question. Our final one comes in from Monkey, and she says, over the last 7 years, a lot has changed. Ownership, coaching, players, trainers, nutrition people, pretty much everything but the carpet and cheerleaders. Do you think that the issues today are because of all the change, or the right change hasn't happened yet? This is a great question. Fantastic question. It's a thinker here early in the morning. But I think that there's a word you can apply to this situation, right? And we talk about it so much. Continuity. When you think about continuity, the Denver Broncos do not come to mind. And the last 7 years has been change, whether it's coaches, coordinators, quarterbacks, player personnel, front office people. I mean, Denver's had a lot of change here, and they've never stuck with a firm plan. Like, I think a lot of the situation is we're going to change this and we're going to hope that, okay, we're going to try to find a Band-Aid solution. Obviously, that hasn't worked, and that has worn out, I think, the patience level of fans in Broncos country, which is understandable, right? But I think when you have an organization that has changed almost every year or every other year, changed the way that they're doing things versus adapting to the way that things are done, they're making widespread changes that impact various levels of the organization. I think the ripple effects of these changes over the 7 years certainly have an impact, right? And not to say that, a decision made 7 years ago is impacting the team today, but I think collectively, maybe over the last 2 years, some of the changes made, the ripple effects are still kind of evident and present here with what's going on with this current Denver Broncos football team. And so it's hard to pinpoint maybe what the right change would be. I think for the Walton Penner family ownership group, their second year owning a professional football franchise, they're also learning on the go. And I think they have a lot of great people around them, some advisors on the football side that help them maybe understand things a little bit more here. But more importantly, they're dedicated to sticking things through here with Sean Payton. Like, Sean Payton is going to get the time to turn things around. And look, I think if anybody thought that turning this around was going to be an overnight job, look, you're kidding yourself. It's not. And I've even exercised that type of caution here in the offseason, saying, hey, like, Denver may not be good the first year, right? It may take them 2 to 3 years to get to where they need to be. But if they're taking strides in that direction, right? And I think right now with Denver sitting at 1-5, for fans, it's very hard to believe that this team is going to make any strides. But I think this is where you can't just, okay, it's not working, let's just go in and scrap it. You're 6-7 games into the season. You cannot do that. Now, I think you can make some changes structurally at various levels of, the coaching staff. Like if Sean Payton wants to make some coaching staff changes, I think we are going to see some of that at some point. Could be by the bye week, could be after the season. But I don't think you make these massive, massive widespread changes because you're sitting at 1-5 and things haven't gone how you wanted. To me, I think that's been the issue here for Denver. They've always tried to find these Band-Aid solutions, whether it be via a trade, whether it be by a free agency signing. Stick with the process. Trust the process. As cliche as that sounds, Denver needs to do that for once. And it ain't going to be pretty at first, but maybe it can head in the right direction as long as Denver is showing gradual growth. And look, maybe this could be an aim part for the second half of the season. If they're showing gradual growth and things are looking a little bit better in some of the areas that haven't been so good looking for them, you stick with it. You keep going, because if you just scrap it when it looks bad, like, you're not going to have patience for what is required to be able to maybe reset a culture. And I think that right there is something that doesn't get talked about enough here. So I think that's a great question. And I thank you so much for sending it in here on our Good Morning Broncos Mailbag edition. So do me a favor, Broncos Country. Hit that subscribe button on this so we can get to 4K subscribers here on YouTube. Continue to grow this for everybody who loves Colorado sports. If you're a Colorado sports fan, Mile High Sports is every team, every day. Go pour yourself another cup of coffee. Enjoy your morning, and we'll see you tomorrow for a brand new episode of GMB.